Hey guys, I am coming to you today with a pre-recorded message. Unfortunately, I have an event on Thursday that I cannot move around for my group coaching, and so I wanted to pre-record a video for you guys, and I hope this helps. I am still seeing a lot of chatter, a lot of conversation, a lot of confusion around the what to say to a buyer to get them to sign a buyer agency agreement. And so I wanted to give you guys just a quick little tip today of a way that you can prepare. So the reason that I am so great at, and that sounds like I'm bragging, but I get this compliment a lot from a lot of agents is that, man, I wish I could talk like you. I wish the words just flowed out of my mouth like they do for you. They're so easy. And I will tell you, this didn't happen overnight. This came from practice, 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 and practicing some more. I also got started in my real estate career in an office where we had to do role play in front of everyone. I had a broker who was very tough, but she was really good and she prepared me very well. And at 19 years old, when I got my license, I had to learn how to compete with all of these multi-million dollar producers in my office. And so the only way that I could get better and compete with them was to practice. And so we did a lot of role playing in my office, both, privately with just among colleagues and also publicly in a sales meeting in front of other people. But what it taught me was to be prepared for anything that someone might say. What it taught me was it gave me language to use when I'm not sure what to say, or when someone has a rebuttal to what I have to say, or some type of objection that I'm trying to overcome to alleviate whatever the concerns are of the client. And so what scripting and practicing role play does is it gives you language where you might not have any. It allows you to think on your feet quickly when you are hit with an objection or you are hit with a roadblock. It allows you to pivot and to already have a response to address whatever their concern is. And the only way that you're going to be super prepared for that is to practice and to, you know, practice over and over and over again so that no matter what somebody says, you are equipped to handle them and respond to it in the appropriate way that you want to. That way you look confident, you feel confident, and people, when you are not stumbling over your words like I am today, because words are hard, when you're not stumbling over your words, people tend to have more confidence in you. You come across as being the right person for the job. So one of the things that I wanted to tell you guys about is don't forget about your friend ChatGPT. And so what I have done is, I'm going to share my screen with you too. What I have done as an example is I started a prompt that basically said, can you practice role play with me regarding the new requirement to sign a buyer agency agreement prior to showing a home to a potential buyer? And ChatGPT says, of course I can. I'll play the role of a potential buyer and you can practice walking me through the need to sign the buyer agency agreement before showing me a home. Are you ready? And so the buyer says, hi, I found a home online. I'd love to see it this weekend. Can we go check it out? Now it's your turn. So if you don't want to practice with a family member, if you're embarrassed to practice with a colleague, if you're not sure still how to phrase the words that you need to explain to a client why they need to sign a buyer broker agreement, I'm going to advise that you open up ChatGPT and practice role playing with ChatGPT. What you'll see is, again, I responded with, yes, absolutely. I'd love to show you that house. Before we look at any houses, we need to take care of some business. We need to discuss my role in the process and how I get paid and your options. I didn't say it's a law. I didn't say I have to get you to sign a contract first. I explained to them in very basic, simple language that before we go looking at any houses, I actually need to take care of some business. And that means we need to talk about what my role is, how you can officially hire me. And we need to talk about how I get paid. And we need to talk about what the process looks like of hiring me and what this is going to entail. I didn't use big language. I didn't make them force, like, oh, you got to sign a contract first. I just said before that we have to take care of some business. So ChatGPT says back to me, oh, I didn't realize we had to do that beforehand. Can you explain to me why we need to do this now? I just want to see if I like the house first. This is a very common reaction to a lot of clients or customers when we say, hey, I need to talk about buyer agency with you, and now I can't show you a house without an agreement in place. They don't care about what is, they kind of want to know why. They want to know why would it benefit them. And so you'll see that I responded with, it is a new requirement that is part of the settlement between the Department of Justice and the National Association of Realtors that all agents must have a signed representation agreement prior to showing any houses. We can make that agreement for a single property only, a specific date, or for limited services, but all buyers deserve to know our role in the home buying process and understand their options. It's all a part of providing more transparency in our industry. So what I want you to understand is that my response to them was that it's a new requirement, that we are bound as members of the National Association of Realtors, that we are agreeing that we must have a signed buyer broker agreement before showing any homes. What that agreement is a representation agreement. That is you hiring me to represent you in some way, shape, or form. Now, you can hire me just for the day. You can hire me just for that specific property, or you can hire me for limited services or full services for a longer period of time, whatever you're most comfortable with. But I do think as a buyer, you deserve to know how we operate, how we get paid, what your options are, that you have choices. All of that is part of being more transparent with our consumers. Now, even just explaining that, even ChatGPT says that makes sense. But what exactly does signing this agreement mean for me? So he wants me to go a step further. I just want to make sure I'm not locked in anything long term if I'm not ready. And I loved that one because it allowed me to say, remember, I'm going to validate what this person said. I understand that completely. And I would never ask anyone to marry me on a first date. Signing the agreement will acknowledge that I've explained all the ways to hire an agent to work on your behalf and explain any fees involved in my service. As I mentioned, we can make it for a specific property only, or we can do for a limited time period. My representation, even for this one house, hires me to assist you more completely. I have more duties and responsibilities to you as a client than I do just as a customer I open the door for. So opening doors for customers is no longer allowed. We have to sign an agreement, even if only temporary, and it's actually for your protection. The buyer said, that actually makes a lot of sense now. I appreciate the transparency and that you're looking out for my best interests. I want you to understand something. Everything that I have said thus far, does any of it have to apply to me? Like, is it more about what's best for me? Am I talking about my compensation yet? Not at all. I did mention that we have to talk about how I get paid, but that is not what is most important to the client. To the buyer, they want to know, what does this contract mean? Why do I have to sign it? And why would it be beneficial or bad for me? And so I haven't even talked about my fee really, other than just mentioning, we're going to talk about how I get paid. But really, you want to point out the benefits to the client about why it would be beneficial for them to sign this agreement, even if it's only for this particular property address. What's the benefit of having this agreement in place? The benefit is that I actually owe you more duties and responsibilities. I actually have an obligation to help you discover things that could be wrong with the house. Whereas before, all I had to do was tell you what I knew of to be wrong with the house. I didn't have an obligation to actually help you uncover things. And so it actually gives me more responsibility for you to hire me. And that's what you deserve. You deserve to have someone looking out on your behalf and looking out for your best interest, not the seller's best interest. And so even my buyer said, if I sign the agreement just for this one property and I decide to look at more houses later, would we need to sign another agreement, or could we extend the first one? It's a great question. We can actually alter the original agreement to reflect any changes that we need to make, or we can enter into a whole new agreement based on that time frame. Whatever you are most comfortable, I want you to know you have options and that I'm flexible, because I want you to feel comfortable. And notice even my ChatGPT said, that sounds good. I feel more comfortable now that I know we can adjust it as needed. Let's go ahead and sign for this property so we can take a look. How do we get started with the agreement? And so I just explained, wonderful, I'll send you a blank copy for you to review, and I'll explain each paragraph to you and how it affects you. Y'all, stop sending stuff through electronic signatures and not not actually, the electronic signature does not relieve you as your obligation to explain to people what they're signing. It also does not relieve you as your obligation to explain to them how it impacts them. What are the repercussions if you don't follow what the agreement says? You want them to understand this is a legally binding document. And as such, you have a responsibility to explain it to them. And so I just said, great, I appreciate you taking the time to explain everything. Or he said, I'll look out for the agreement. I'll let you know if I have any questions. Looking forward to seeing the house. And basically, I just asked ChatGPT to give this conversation to me as in a PDF. But let's start a new one. And let's say I want to take the same prompt. Can you practice role play with me regarding the new requirement to sign a buyer agency agreement prior to showing a home to a potential buyer? Please assume the buyer does not have money to pay my compensation out of their pocket. Because this is what we're all afraid of right now, right? Like, this is why everyone's in a panic. Like, what happens if my buyer can't afford my fee? And I put that my fee is 3 apples on there and the buyer can't afford any apples, much less 3. And some of the houses in my market are only offering 2 apples or 1.5 apples. And so I said this prompt because I wanted you guys to see how we would twist it. And before I read what it says, what I would say, if this was just you asking me, what would you say? Again, the buyer says, I'll sign it, but I don't have money to pay you out of my pocket if the seller does not pay my fee. And so that is where you need to make sure that the buyer understands that we will make the compensation as part of your offer. And what that means is that you're going to ask the seller, you're going to offer them a certain amount of money, whatever that price is that you want to offer them on the house that you find, but you're also going to ask the seller to pay my fee. And we're going to specify that in the offer. And so that way the seller knows that this is their offer, and you're also asking for any concessions or asking for them to contribute towards the cost of my services. In most instances, the seller is going to be willing to do that. It's just like selling for sale by owners. I've done it for 25 years. I always presented the for sale by owner with why I was worth every dime, why I was not a fly-by-night agent, why they could count on me to be a great representative of the buyer to make sure that things happen the way that they're supposed to. And then also, my experience spoke a lot for me in terms of how many years I've been selling real estate and how much volume that I've done. And then also of, reassuring them that you have systems and processes in place to make sure things don't slip through the cracks. And that your buyer is being well advised by people who are competent and skilled, right? A seller is not going to be concerned about paying that as much as if your paperwork looks in shambles, you're late, you missed deadlines, you were an hour late for your showing, you left all the back doors open. There's a lot of things that contribute to the confidence that the seller has in you and how you present yourself, and then turning around and asking them to pay you. Show your value, show your worth, right? So let's see. It says, I'm really excited to help you find your new home. Before we get started, there's an important step we need to take care of. The new rules require us to have a signed buyer agency agreement before I can show you any homes. I want to walk you through what that means and how it works. Does that sound good? The buyer said, sure, but I have to be honest. I'm really tight on cash right now, and I'm worried I won't be able to pay your fees. How much is this going to cost me? I want you to remember that you want to explain to the buyer that they have options. I want you to explain to them how you are going to ask the seller to pay your compensation as part of their offer. You want to explain to a potential buyer how that affects the seller's net. You want them to understand. So, for example, if 5 buyers are writing an offer, all 5 write an offer for list price. 4 of them ask for the seller to pay the buyer's agent's compensation. You need your buyer to understand that the one who doesn't might end up winning because they are affecting the seller's net, right? You just need to lay down the options for them and let them know that in 9 times out of 10, you're going to be able to get the seller to pay your fee if you feel like that's what you can do. But you want them to understand that in most transactions, the compensation is still going to come from the seller in a lot of the markets that I coach in, a lot of markets that I sell in. This agreement isn't committing you to pay me directly, except for a lot of our buyer broker agreements does say that. It says that if the seller doesn't pay, that the buyer is obligated to it. So that is where your buyer broker agreement can be modified or altered. And you can actually write in Tennessee, anyway, you cannot do this in North Carolina, but in Tennessee, you can write in special stipulations that say, that the buyer authorizes me only to show properties where compensation is being offered by the seller, or where the seller is willing to pay my compensation. And if the seller is not, what is the minimum fee that you're willing to accept? And is the buyer on board with paying that? You've got to, again, this is about transparency. What are their options? What are you willing to do? Some buyers agents are not going to be willing to take less than what their fee is. Some other buyers agents are willing to take a percentage of what their normal fee is. They're just happy to get paid. Some are going to charge a retainer fee. Some are going to put it as zero and then alter it once they find out what the seller is willing to pay. You guys just got to understand, don't make this more complicated at all. Just make sure that you are being transparent. You are explaining the options. You are also explaining how their decisions impact them. Okay, you definitely need to check with your lender if it's something that there's an option of bumping up the price to be able to finance the fee or something like that. You've been financing them for years anyway. They were just included in the sales price before, right? So this is not something new, really. It's just how we communicate it to them and explain it to them that's going to be new. This agreement is formalizing our relationship and outlining my responsibilities to you as your agent. It does protect us both, and it gives me the ability to fully represent your interests throughout the home buying process. So I liked my other role play much better. This one says, does that ease some of your concerns? And the buyer says, so just to be clear, I won't have to pay anything up front or out of pocket. So this said, the ChatGPT said, exactly, in the vast majority of cases, my fee will come from the seller's proceeds at closing. So that comes out of the net because we wrote that part of the offer. If for some reason a property doesn't offer a full buyer agent commission, I will always bring that to your attention up front, and we can discuss options before moving forward. I'm here to make sure you don't face any surprises, and I want to make this as stress-free and smooth as possible. But I also want them to understand that we're going to talk about my fee as it relates to the houses and what I know. We're either going to make that as part of the deal, or I'm going to have a minimum that the buyer is responsible for. And if that buyer is not willing to take on responsibility for my fee, I, as an agent, have to make a decision. Do I want to continue to invest time in someone who is not willing to pay my fee in the event that the seller does not? And is that bad or good? I've seen so many posts on social media in the last couple of weeks. It's giving me a headache, actually. I'm tired of talking about it, where an agent said, I lost 4 buyers this weekend because all of them refused to sign a buyer agency agreement. And what that tells me is that you are not very good at presenting this agreement. You're not very good at explaining to this client why it's necessary for them or why it's important for them, how it benefits them. And you are also not good at demonstrating your value about why they should commit to you, why they should hire you, why you were the right one to choose to begin with out of the 36,000 realtors, why you. If you have 4 people that all refuse to sign it, there's something wrong in your presentation of this agreement. There's something wrong in the way you're explaining it to them, and you're not making people feel safe, secure, and comfortable with working with you before signing an agreement. Maybe you're asking them to get married on the first date, and that's kind of what this settlement is asking us to do, except for it's really not. It's a matter of, how did you explain this agreement to them? Do they understand why you have to have an agreement before you show a house? Right? No one's policing it, right? No one's walking around saying, show me your agreement. And in my states that I serve, we don't have to send that agreement to anyone. We just have to acknowledge that we do, in fact, have one. And I'm just going to tell you, a lot of the times it's because you're using the wrong language to present it. You are making it sound like it's a law. You're making it sound like it's something you have to do. You're guaranteeing people that the seller's going to pay your fee when that's not true. You need to be better at explaining. And so my advice to you today, get on ChatGPT, do some role playing with ChatGPT and ask them to play the part of a buyer and let you work out the kinks on what you say to these potential clients when they hit you with a pushback on, I can't afford it. I don't want to commit to you. I'm not sure if I even like you. I'm not sure if you're the right person for me. I want you to have responses for each one of those things. I want you to be able to think on your feet quickly. I want you to be able to answer questions that they have based on how you present it to them. And then the biggest thing is that I want them to feel safe and I want you to feel comfortable not making it out to be such a big deal that you're scaring people away. Again, the agreement should make them feel protected. The agreement should make them feel like they have a teammate in their corner advocating on their behalf. This agreement should make them feel like, hey, we're in good hands and we know our agent is looking out for us. If it doesn't feel that way, then there's something wrong in the way you presented it. There's something wrong in the words and the language that you chose to coerce them to sign something that they didn't feel ready for or they didn't feel comfortable with. And that means we have to go back to the drawing board and get better at presenting it. We have to get more comfortable with how to present it. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to get better unless you practice. You're not going to get better unless you invest the time in role playing. And if you don't want to role play with a real human where you're afraid what they're going to say, or you're afraid that they're going to laugh at you or think you sound dumb because you're tripping over your words, or you're hemming and hawing, or the words aren't coming out right, then practice with ChatGPT if you want. I don't care who you practice with, but practice. Get better at explaining it to people. Get better at walking people through their pros and cons and the repercussions of their decisions. What are the outcomes? If you don't sign the agreement, how does this impact you? Because every agent, this is not just me, that's not just my company. This is every realtor in my MLS is bound by it. So we're all going to do the same thing. So at the end of the day, you need to select an agent that you feel safe and secure and comfortable hiring. Whether you hire me just for today, or you hire me for a month, or you hire me for 6 months to a year because you're building a house, at the end of the day, I need you to understand that you have options. I'm not going to ask you to marry me on a first date. We're going to get to know each other. But that's why it's important that we do these consultations before you ever go looking at houses. All right. I hope this was helpful to you guys. I hope that you have a wonderful week ahead of you. Please take the time to practice your scripting and role playing on getting your buyer broker agreement signed. Make sure that you practice with someone or with ChatGPT where you are pushed to explain yourself multiple times to somebody who's really hesitant. Because the more you do that, the more prepared you're going to be when you get to real clients in the field that tell you, well, I don't know if I want to sign an agreement. I've looked at lots of houses in the past and never had to sign one of these before. Okay, well, let's talk about why you have to sign it now. Get really good at summarizing this lawsuit in very easily understood language. Make sure that they understand why it's important, why it's beneficial to them. Do you notice still we are 36 minutes in or something like that, and I still have not talked about my money for most of the conversation? The agreement isn't really about money, y'all. Yes, it's a portion of it, but the agreement is about agency. The agreement is about who you're hiring. The agreement is what are my duties to you. That goes well beyond the commission conversation. The compensation is one part of this agreement. So if you spend all your time talking about your commission and then you talk about agency this much, what does that tell the buyer? It tells the buyer that all you care about is how you get paid, which we all got to get paid. But that doesn't matter to a client. What matters to them is why do I need you? Why are you important in this process? What kind of things can you help me avoid? What kind of things can you help me navigate that are really important so that I don't make mistakes? How will you protect me? That's why they sign an agreement, y'all. It's not just about your paycheck. So I want you to think about that. I want you to practice with ChatGPT or find a friend. But let me know if you tried it and how your conversations go. Let me know that you've been practicing and how those practice events happen. And then when you hit it in real life and you are prepared, I want that feedback too. Laura, I practiced with ChatGPT for weeks, and then I finally got in front of a client, and here's how it went. Give me some feedback. Let me know. But I know that you guys are complicating this more than you need to. At the end of the day, consumers want transparency and clarity. They also want to know why. So your job is to convince them about why do they need a realtor. We are not just opening doors. And you'll notice that one of my responses in my ChatGPT was, we're not just door openers. There are 183 other things that I do in this process. Opening the door is just one. And now you can't even hire me just to open the door because I have credentials and skills that are needed well beyond just opening the door. Explain that to them. Why do you need me? What could go wrong? And anybody's heard me talk at any length of time, or even one other time you've heard me say, you can cut your own bangs, but should you? You can file your own taxes, but should you? Right? These are all things like, yes, you can buy a house without me, without representation, but should you? Do you know what kind of things you could potentially fall into? Do you know what kind of things to look out for? And even if you know, are you the best person to negotiate for yourself? Maybe not. So hope this helps. You guys go out and sell something. I will see you guys next week where we will reconnect, and I will post what that topic is on Monday. You guys go out and sell something. And thanks so much for watching this. I hope it helped you.